Okay, so this tutorial will show you how to draw your mechanical toy design for the front of your mechanical toy in 2D design so that we can send it to the laser cutter to cut it out of the plastic that we're going to use, and then obviously we're going to stick it onto the front of our mechanical toys. So first of all, I'm going to run through a few quick things to do with 2D design. You can open it from the start menu by clicking on start and then typing in 2D. It looks like that, so it has a 2D design written on it, nice and easy to recognize. You open it. When you open it, there'll be a little screen that says login, which if you just click on the outside, so if I just show you that very quickly. So if you click 2D and then you open 2D design, then you get this, but if you just click on anywhere on the screen behind that, it will disappear. So let me just go back to my design. So you're going to open a file to help you. The teacher will tell you which file this is, and when you open it, you'll look at something like this. This is what you'll see. So what we can see here is an A3 piece of paper, so it's quite a big piece of paper, and on that piece of paper we can see that there are two drawings. The bottom drawing, this one here, that represents the front of the toy at the base, so that will cover the front of the toy, that will cover the crank mechanism and the base and the two blocks of wood. And the one at the top, that represents the design, the animal, the item, whatever you're going to put at the top of the toy that will kind of move in that reciprocating motion, up and down motion. So those are the drawings will be given to you. Before going into the drawings, what I'm going to show you is the tools. In 2D design, tools are very simple. First of all, on the left hand side here, you have a toolbox, and we have a select tool, the black arrow. So if you wanted to select something, you click on it, or you could click and drag to select something like that. Then you can move it around by clicking on, or stretch it by clicking on the yellow squares. Please don't change the size of this though, I'm just going to show you. We've got lines, so we've got a number of different lines that we could use. Okay, we've got just a straight line there, and we've got also this line here, a series of connected lines which we're going to use. It tells you on the toolbox what those tools are called, so draw a single line, draw a series of connected line, and so on and so forth. We've got circles, all different kinds of circles we can draw. We've got arcs, we've got rectangles, but not only rectangles, that's actually the shapes tool. So if we click down and hold down on shapes, you get all kinds of different shapes. You've got triangles, you've got ovals, and you've got polygons, so hexagons and octagons. We've got a path tool, which allows you to draw like a curvy line, series of curved lines. We've got a text tool, and we've got a range of other kind of tools that do bits and pieces as well. We've also got, which you'll probably use, is the delete tool here at the bottom, and that's usually set to delete any, but if you click and hold down on it, there are some other delete tools, such as this one, delete part of an object. We're going to use that later on. That kind of acts like a pair of scissors to snip bits off that you don't want anymore. Okay, we've also got a grid. Now when you open a file in 2D design, you will see a grid, which is a series of dots, and obviously these dots are there to help you draw. For the most part, you'll be drawing with the grid lock on. We may turn that off from time to time, but you need to make sure that your grid lock is on. And then to change the size of the grid, you double click on the dots in the top right hand corner, and you're going to change that to 1 by 1. No, in fact we changed to 5 by 5 to begin with, sorry, 5 by 5. That should be saved as part of the file. So when you open this, you should see that there is a grid there. Okay, the grid will actually be 1 by 1. Now sometimes you can't see the dots, that's because we zoomed out too far. So to zoom in, there's another toolbox in the top right hand corner where the grid was, so I can turn the grid on and off, turn the grid lock on and off, and then I can zoom in by clicking on the plus magnifying glass there. Okay, so zooming in and out, you can also scroll up and down with the mouse wheel to move around the screen, and we can also use the scroll bars at the side of the screen as well to move around our different views. I'm actually going to select that now. I'm going to put them a little bit closer together so that when I zoom in I can see both drawings. Now you can see that the dots are there now, and each dot is a millimetre, 1 millimetre apart, and we all know 10 millimetres is a centimetre. Now these are drawn to the correct size that you will need them to be when you cut them out and stick them onto your toy. This box here is 140 by 70, and sorry, this box here is 140 by 50, and then that line here that I'm pointing to on the screen is 20 millimeters. So the total height of that will be 70 millimeters. So the total height of this box will be 70 millimeters. So that line there represents the top edge of the blocks on the front of the toy, and then you've got 2 centimeters, 20 millimeters above that to draw in whatever shape that you want. You can go higher than that. I'll show you that a bit later.
Yeah, I don't need to do that. You're right.
Okay, so and the top part here is obviously the bit where the action is going to take place. So here I've got the outline of my kind of crocodile, but it could be a bird or any other kind of animal that you want to draw. Obviously you can do other things as well. I'll talk a bit about that later on. But here we've got the hole for the pivot point where it's going to be stuck onto the front of the mechanical toy, where it's going to be screwed on. And obviously here, this line here represents the kind of mouth where it's going to open and close. So first of all, we're going to start with the background or the foreground as it is that you're going to stick on the front of the toy. Right, I'm going to show you 2 ways of doing that. One way of doing that is with straight lines. So if I click and hold down on the line tool, we've got lots of other tools as well, and I'm going to draw a series of connected lines, which is this second tool here. And what I'm going to do, you can see that my little cross now, I've got a little cross, sticks to the grid. If it doesn't stick to the grid, that means the grid lock's not on. So make sure the grid lock is on there. And then what I can do, I'm going to start at this point here. I'm not going to go below there, because if I do, when it cuts it out and stick it on, we'll see gaps. We'll see the wood behind the background, the foreground. We don't want to see that. We're trying to hide the blocks of wood at the front of the toy. So I can click. Now in 2D design, you click and let go of the button. You don't have to hold down. So I can click and then click and then click and then click. So if I was doing some blades of grass, then I could do that kind of thing. I'm not aiming for them to be perfectly symmetrical, okay, but you can see that I do end on a straight line rather than ending on a blade, so I might want to change that. So to change that, if I go to click on the black arrow, I can select each line, click on it and then press delete on the keyboard to delete them, or I could select them by clicking and dragging around them and then stretch them. Could do that, and then I could draw that last blade in, and then I get that kind of triangle at the end. To let go, right, you can't just carry on drawing, you right click. So you right click and you let go. Okay, so that's one way of doing that. So I'm going to click my select tool, and I'm going to select all of those, and I'm going to delete them all. No, I'm not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete them separately, because if I click and drag around them, I end up deleting the line below that I want. So I want to keep that guideline. So I'm just going to select each one and delete each one. The other way of doing it is a path. path tool, click on the path tool. If you click and hold down on the path tool, there are other path tools, but we're going to use this first one here. And this will give me a curved line, but in the same way, if I click and let go of the button, and then I decide where I want that to go to, and then I click again. So if you wanted to do some waves, like make it look like water, so I keep clicking and click, and every time I move, it creates a curve for me at the point in which I've clicked. And again, I'm trying to get to that point there with another click. So click there, and then same thing again, right click to let go. And you get a series of curves. Okay? So that's two ways of drawing in the top of the toy. You could keep it straight if you wanted to. So if you were doing a car on a road or something like that, that's fine. Now you can also not engrave, but we can cut into the plastic, but we can cut it in, but not all the way through. So we can do a little pattern on the front here. Now you can either do that by, you could copy and paste the top drawing that you've done. In 2D design, it's dead easy to copy things. It's this the two little boxes at the bottom. If you click on those two little yellow boxes that overlap each other, it says copy. You can see it makes a copy. If you click on the big yellow box in the center, click again. Don't hold down your mouse button. You don't have to hold down your mouse button. You can let go, and then when you got it into the place you want it, click again. So you could create a series of waves. I could do another one as well. I have done that on my crocodile idea. And then when we set these up to cut, we'll set these up to cut lightly into the surface of the plastic rather than all the way through. I'm going to just have one of those. I'm just going to have it in the middle there. Okay. So once you're happy with what you have drawn, then it's a task. The next task is to delete the parts that we don't want anymore. Okay. So just remember, just remind you, don't go below this line. Okay, with the shape that you want the top of that to be. Okay. If you do make a mistake, you've got one undo. It's either on the button here or Control Z on the keyboard, but you've only got one. So you've only got one undo. You can't undo multiple times. You can only undo once. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on Delete Any, hold down, and I'm going to select this tool, delete part of an object between the nearest two intersections. And basically, what that is a pair of scissors. And you can see the little logo for it is a line that's been intersected by two red lines, and there's a gap in the middle. So what this will do, act like a pair of scissors. So I don't want that line there, I don't want that one, and you can basically go around deleting all the bits that you don't want. So you don't want that bit at the top there. You definitely don't want this line, because if you leave that line in, it will cut the top off and it'll just fall apart. So I need to delete that bit as well. Now sometimes it will, if you zoom in, if I click on zoom, sometimes it might create little bits of lines. So what you need to do, so if I just create a bit of line. So it may do, if I zoom in, you'll have to check by zooming in. I've just got one there that you can see. It may create little bits of lines. So if I could delete this one, you can see there's a little bit of line there. You've just got to make sure that you go in by zooming in with your zoom tool and just check. So I can see there's a bit of a dark line there. So if I zoom in, we can see that it's got a bit of straight line and a bit of the curve. So I've got to decide which one I want to delete. I'm going to delete the straight line, just leave the curve. So zoom in and just make sure that that design, that line is nice and tidy and there aren't any little bits of lines floating about everywhere. The last thing I'm going to do on here is I'm going to change the colour of this line. The line that you want on the front, you don't want that to cut all the way through. You only want it to cut into the surface. I'm going to give that a red line. So at the top of the screen here, go to line and colour. So there's line and there's colour. I'm going to click on colour and I'm going to select red. Now the red needs to be the red from the bottom row of colours here. It needs to be this one, and then click OK. And then if you click off the back into the background, you can see that that's changed colour. Now we can set on the laser cutter, we can set that line to only engrave into the surface, and we'll set the black line to cut all the way through. So that's your foreground done. So the next step is the kind of the main part, which is the animal or the item, whatever it is you want to move at the top. Now we've got two parts to this. We've got the lower, in this case it's an animal, so we've got the lower kind of jaw, and we've got the upper jaw, actually three parts, and then we've got the kind of circle here with the pivot point in here. If I click on that, don't do this, but if I click on that and then move them away, you can see that they are actually two separate parts, look. And this part here is all in one piece, and the top part is all in one piece. Okay, so when we cut them, they are all in one piece. But what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to undo that and put it back. Now if you do move something by mistake, don't try and put it back, because you might not get it back into the same place. Just undo and it'll put it exactly back where you got it from. I'm zooming a bit more. Now I'm going to leave them together as one because I want to draw in some teeth. Now you may or may not want to do this, but I'm going to draw in some teeth. So again, I'm going to use the connectors, draw a series of connected lines, like a zigzag lines, and I'm going to do this on the bottom jaw. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a series of connected lines like this. Now I'm not too worried about, again, whether they're accurate or exactly the same size. I'm just going to draw. If you wanted to get them exact same size, that's up to you. And I'm going to stop there. I'm not going to go too close to the circle, and then I'm going to right click and let go. Now what I've got to decide is are these teeth going to be part of the lower jaw, or are they going to be part of the upper jaw? Now what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to make them part of the lower jaw, because we've got this line here. Now if I leave that line in place, then I'm going to end up with the teeth being cut off. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to use my delete part, and I'm going to click on that line. I have to click it a couple of times because the line is there twice, and then delete that line. And then we can see that it's part of the teeth are part of the upper jaw and the lower jaw, actually, in this case, obviously. So when the mouth comes together, the teeth will line up. So while I'm here, I'm going to make some other adjustments. So I'm going to put a little snout on. So you could, and right click, you could now change the shape of this. So if it was a bird, which I'll show you in a minute, you could change the shape of that, but I'm going to keep it straight. Oh no, I'm not. I'm going to put a path in, actually. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the path, click on the path tool, and I'm going to draw some little bumps on his head. I'm not going to go too far over. Again, right click to let go. But if you wanted to, you could, obviously, if you started from here, you could do something like that. You could completely change the shape of the top jaw there, like that. You could change the shape of the bottom jaw if you wanted to as well. So if you started from there and just did that. What you can't do though, so I've made a mistake there, I'm going to delete it. What you can't do though is change the shape, change the shape of the bottom. Okay, do not change that straight line, because that straight line sits on top of the toy. It needs to be straight. Do not well, you can draw out here if you wanted to, that's fine. You can see I'm having trouble getting that to lock onto that corner. There's this tool called attach, which is this little square with a circle. If I click on that attach tool and then click there, it'll attach it for me, and then turn that tool off and then carry on drawing. So you could do something like that. So you could change this shape as well, that's fine. Okay, so mine is going to look like that. I need to delete these lines so they don't get cut off. I'm going to do that as well, and I'm going to make a little hole with the circle tool. The circle tool is a circle tool. When you draw circles from the center and you pull out. Now I'm not going to go too close to the edge, because what that will mean is if there's a hole there and there's a tiny little bit of plastic between the edge of the hole and the edge of the actual design, and it's likely to snap. So I'm going to give it a lot of space and then click, and there you go. I've got my hole. On this top piece, I would not recommend doing any lines to engrave into the surface, because it will just take too long to cut. So there you go. I've got my foreground here at the bottom, and I've got my top and bottom jaw. Now I need to separate the top and the bottom jaw out, because they are two separate drawings, because the circle here, this bit here, needs to overlap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste that. Now to do that, I'm going to click on the select tool, I'm going to click and drag around everything, I'm going to copy it, and if you do click on the background by mistake like that, right, you're going to have to undo. Right, I'm going to try again, copy, you grab it from the center, and I'm going to put it above the other one like that. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to separate them out. So the first thing I'm going to do is just click on the bottom. If I zoom in, if I click on the bottom line here, then I'll select the bottom jaw and I'm going to press delete, and I end up with just the top jaw. And then if I click on this line here, I should select most of the top jaws, delete that. Now you can see I've got these lines left, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag around them and delete those. So now I have the top and the bottom jaw separated. If you wanted to, you could, in fact, not if you wanted to. What I'd like you to do is click and drag around the top jaw, and then you're going to go to edit and group. So that locks all of those lines together, so you can't separate them, just in case you move it and then separate the lines by mistake. And then I'm going to click and drag around the bottom jaw and go to edit and group. And what I'm going to do, just so it makes a bit more sense, I'm going to put the lower jaw there, I'm going to put the upper jaw there, and there you have it. So you have your kind of you should end up with 3 pieces for your mechanical toy. You can, of course, obviously experiment with shapes. You might just check with your teacher that it's going to work, just to make sure. So if you're doing some kind of not an animal with a top, a lower and top jaw, if you're doing a car or something like that that's going to move, then you're going to have to do this a slightly different way. Just check with your teacher before you do that. Okay, the next thing is just make sure you save it. So go to File and Save as usual, and then obviously just make sure that you save that into your documents in the first instance. Give it a good name, put your name on it, and then mechanical toy, and then your teacher will ask you to save that into a shared area ready for laser cutting. And there you go.